Part 2. What Christianity actually teaches about the other. For Christians, the question of how to treat people from different cultures or religions is not new. In fact, it lies at the very heart of the teachings of Jesus. Because the world Jesus lived in was deeply divided. Jews and Samaritans distrusted each other. Romans ruled over the region as occupying imperial power. Religious identity shaped social boundaries everywhere. Into that world, Jesus told a story that became one of the most famous moral lessons in history, the parable of the Good Samaritan. In the story, a man is beaten and left on the roadside. Several respected religious figures pass by and ignore him. Then someone unexpected stops to help, a Samaritan. To modern ears, that might not sound shocking, but to the audience listening to Jesus at the time, it would have been deeply provocative. Samaritans were considered outsiders. Many Jews regarded them with suspicion or hostility. Yet in the story, the Samaritan becomes the moral hero. The message is unmistakable. Compassion is not limited by tribe, nationality, or religion. Your neighbor is not defined by who belongs to your group. Your neighbor is simply the person in front of you. Jesus reinforces this idea even more directly in another famous commandment. Love your neighbor as yourself. This instruction doesn't come with qualifiers. It doesn't say, love your neighbor if they share your religion. Love your neighbor if they look like you. Love your neighbor if they were born in the same country. It simply says, love your neighbor. And when early Christians tried to define who counted as neighbor, the answer that emerged was radical. Everyone. The early church spread across cultures and languages precisely because it rejected tribal boundaries. The Apostle Paul wrote that in Christ there is neither Jew nor Greek. In other words, the dividing lines that humans build between groups should not determine how we treat one another. That principle carries powerful implications for modern debates. If Christians claim that an entire religious group is secretly taking over the country, if they spread exaggerated fears about millions of neighbors, if they assume malicious intent based on identity alone, then they risk contradicting the ethical vision they claim to follow. Christian teaching places a very high value on truth. The 10 Commandments warn against bearing false witness. In plain language, do not spread false accusations. So when demographic claims are demonstrably incorrect, repeating them becomes morally problematic, not simply politically controversial, but ethically wrong within a Christian framework. There is another theme in the teachings of Jesus that is worth remembering. Again and again, he warns about the danger of fear. Fear of outsiders, fear of losing status, fear of those who are different. In many of his parables, the people who act wrongly are not villains in the dramatic sense. They are ordinary individuals who allow fear or pride to distort their judgment. History shows that this dynamic repeats again and again. Groups become scapegoats for wider social anxieties. Economic worries, cultural change, and political frustrations get projected onto minorities. But Christianity calls believers to a different response. Not fear, not scapegoating, but humility, truth, and compassion. That does not mean Christians must agree with every aspect of another religion. Healthy disagreement is part of any pluralistic society, but disagreement is very different from demonization. A society built on mutual suspicion cannot remain healthy for long. A society built on truth and neighborly respect has a much stronger foundation. And here's the irony that many historians point out. Every group that was once accused of taking over Britain eventually became part of Britain. Irish Catholics, Jewish refugees, Caribbean migrants, South Asian communities. Each generation heard warnings that the country would collapse if these groups stayed. Yet the nation adapted, cultures blended, and the dire predictions faded into history. The same pattern is likely unfolding today, which means the real question is not whether Britain will change. Every society changes over time. The real question is what kind of values will guide that change: fear or truth, suspicion or neighborly compassion. For Christians especially, the teachings of Jesus offer a clear compass. Love your neighbor, tell the truth, resist the temptation to divide the world into us and them. Those principles are not easy, but they are the foundation of the faith, and they challenge believers to look beyond rumors and rhetoric and instead see the humanity of the people living beside them. Because in the end, a country is not defined by which religion grows faster. It's defined by the values its people choose to live by.